Welcome back to the Adventure Athletes podcast. Today we've got a very good friend of mine coming on, Eli, who plays international basketball representing Wales. He's also just started up his own coaching and fitness company called Eli Hoop Fit. So if you're interested in basketball or fitness in general, make sure you go and check him out. Now, in this episode, we speak about using passion as a driving force for us, but also how it can hinder our performance and hold us back and get in our way. We also talk about optimizing our process. Now, this could be with training or just generally in life. And we talk about how we can use stereotypes to benefit us and not just see them as something that's an obstacle that we have to overcome. Now, if you like this episode, make sure you follow us on Spotify, Instagram, and YouTube, and share us around as much as you can. Honestly, every single time you guys share an episode or a little clip, little snippet, whatever it may be, it helps us out massively, more than you can ever imagine. Okay, I know that we've been having some issues with sound quality recently, but just bear with us, we are working on it. This is all new to me and I'm still trying to figure it out as I go, but I think it's improving with every episode. Now, with all that said and done, enjoy the podcast. Should we get started?
Yep.
Do you know the question from the last guest? It's from Gav. It's written on the board if you can see it.
Yeah, I'm trying to read it. It's the bottom one, isn't it?
No, that's just like me writing. It's the top bit.
Alright.
What?
Yeah, because he had like really neat cursive, didn't he?
Yeah.
I can't read it from here.
I know what it is, so I'll ask it if you want.
I can't read it. Sorry, yeah. Don't let you down, but I can't read that.
It's alright, Gav. I can read your writing, Gav. It's okay. You listen to the podcast, so I'm definitely including this part. So, question from Gavin. It was intended for someone else.
Yeah.
But it's just as applicable for you.
Okay, I'll see if I can.
What drives you to do what you do?
Passion, and I feel like passion's the main thing because I'm so passionate about basketball, and like I look back in my life and I just think that I've always referred back to basketball, whether it's either just watching it and just like watching the players I like. So Kobe was a big influence on me in my childhood and just me growing and like loving the sport and just the mentality. And also one thing I found is like looking back on my own highlights and just seeing like how far I've come and how like good I used to be. Like maybe I've come from injury and just looking back at my highlights and I just think I still like I'm good at this and I like it, I enjoy it, and kind of that realization moment really kind of drives me, you know, and I think that one thing I think that you can get caught up in life is the like not following your passion, and I think that that's such an important thing to keep you going and keep the flame kind of burning, because it's so easy to get caught up in like just like the rat race, you know what I mean? So just working, just work, sleep. I can't do that. I need something more interesting, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's probably it.
Do you feel like it's become the sort of foundation point for your life then? Everything sort of branches off of that one passion.
Yeah, and it's kind of annoying because I don't want to be a cliche. I don't want to just be like the guy that plays basketball, because I mean I'm not getting paid to play right now, so it's like, oh, you know what I mean? So sorry. But like, I think the sorry, well, can you repeat the question again?
Do you find that for you basketball kind of is like a foundation for a lot of other things in life? So when you're like having a hard time or a happy time or stressful time, it's like always something you come back to, and there's a lot of crossover, like it informs a lot of other areas in your life as well.
I think that's yeah. So in terms of crossover, I feel like in terms of coaching, like the way that I coach, kind of is similar to it's similar, and it helps me with other aspects of my life. So in terms of my job with like working with kids in schools and the alternative education side of it, like that's all kind of stemmed from basketball, and it's crazy how many different like skills that I've got from basketball that can kind of relate and cross over to other kind of aspects of my life, you know. And I just think it always seems to circle back to basketball, and that's why as I said, that's why I just want to keep that flame burning, just regardless. Even if I can't play, I want to be involved in the sport somehow, and just trying to help the next generation. Like, that's kind of always been my mentality.
When were you first introduced to it then?
So to be honest, Space Jam. Yeah, Space Jam. I had it on. I remember I had this yellow TV with a VHS, and I remember Hercules was always my favorite tape I had. Hercules and Lion King, and then for some reason I don't know. My mum just bought me Space Jam because I think she just thought it'd be cool to me, and I watched that. Yeah, I know. Nah, Hercules is still like amazing, but yeah. But Space Jam was really kind of what kind of intrigued me. And then I'm not sure specifically, but I think it was watching Kobe. I think around that time was when Kobe, yes, so 2010, yes. So it was the 2010 finals, I believe, 2009, 2010 finals. And my mum bought me the DVD for that at that point, where it was like the championship, the movie about it. And I must have watched that DVD so many times, So coming off of Space Jam and then seeing this DVD where I'd be so interested in this guy Kobe and just his mentality and just seeing all of that was so inspirational to me, And I think that moment of realizing that like I've got someone to look up to, and if I'm being honest, during that time in my life, I was very I was a bit, I didn't really have an identity, it must have been in year 7, so around 11, 12, and yeah, year 8, 11, 12, and I really didn't have, I felt like I didn't have an identity. I was going to a new school, and like I had friends, but I didn't really know myself like that, and like to kind of being able to zero in on something that I genuinely liked, and I seemed to be good at, well, it was from practice, if I'm being honest, and just go to the park. So I used to go to the park for hours with my friends. My friends would play football, and I'd be on the basketball side of it, and I'd be just there for hours, just on my own, just trying to be like Kobe, And I think that kind of mentality crossed over to other things, and that's what I kind of like about it. It's not just, it doesn't have to just be basketball about playing. It's bigger than that, And yeah.
So coming from that boy that got into basketball from watching Space Jam to now representing your country and playing internationally, what would be like the 3 defining moments that took you from one to the other?
Oh, damn. I think so. When I think it was year 8, I was training with the Wales team, but I did feel a bit like an outsider of the, yeah. I felt like a bit of an outsider, and I think that kind of had an effect on me. And I remember I stopped going to the practices because it was in the Ronda, and my mum was driving, so she'd try and drive me all this way, and she wasn't that confident of a driver, so it was just so much stress. It felt like, and then going there, I wasn't enjoying it. And I didn't realize I couldn't figure out why I was not enjoying it,
Yeah.
And stopping that, and then coming back to basketball around, I think it was about 14, 15 is when I came back to it. So I had a bit of a break where I kind of fell off. My own personal stuff was going on in my personal life. And to come back to it and just realize how much I love the sport, I was like, what is wrong with me, And it's funny because that kind of happened again when I went to university. And I went to Leeds. I went to university in Leeds, and some more stuff happened in my personal life. So it was kind of a poor time for me to move so far away from Cardiff and far away from my home. So I was dealing with a lot of like mental issues and depression. You know how it is as like a young man trying to grow up. And I got. It's funny because I remember I got into the first team in my uni, and it was Bucks Premier, so it was a high level of basketball, and I was the youngest on my team. I had a lot of stuff going for me, and then I believe I got injured towards the end of that season, and that's when it kind of fell off completely. And I'm so glad I circled back to basketball, and that's kind of what kept me going, And I think that it feels like basketball has been such a centralized thing in keeping me sane, if I'm being honest, and I think that, it's funny because, like, everyone's like, therapy is pushed a lot these days, and obviously, great thing, it's good to have therapy, and I was going to counselling and stuff, but nothing helped me as much as having a purpose, which was basketball, and going back to it in, like, I think it was my last year in Leeds, going back to it, I was just like, what am I doing? I can't stop basketball, because, like, that, I think as a young man, having a purpose is so important, and being able to wake up and feel like, okay, that's me, I've got something to do, I've got something to work towards, is so important, just to keep sane, especially, just to keep sane in this world, it's tough, but...
It sounds a bit like you had those moments in life where you had a wobble, and kind of lost your passion for it. Well, times we had big changes, and it's something you said you kind of had that, not like identity crisis, but it's that time in your life you have to find yourself and who you are. And all you've known up until that point is almost this love for basketball. Yeah. It's almost like, it looks to me like you might just need a bit of space from it to go and find and explore other parts of yourself. But you kind of had that foot in basketball that eventually come back, and the fact you came back just proves your love for it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that, circling back to the international, so I think, what was my first? I can't even remember what my first kind of representation. But I'm pretty sure when I moved back to Cardiff after university is when I started kind of playing for the senior men's team and getting more involved in that. And it's great because I kind of could come back to my hometown coach. So my coach, growing up, I had a coach called Coach Manny. I work with him with tribal basketball now, and he was like kind of a big influence on me in terms of my passion for basketball. And I just remember the hours of just working on skills and stuff. And I remember coming into it, like, in my head I always thought he was really strict and stuff, but I think he had a certain way of kind of getting the best out of people, and I think that, because I was watching a video, and, like, you have coaches that shout at you, and if you're trying to teach someone maths, shouting at them isn't going to work, but say you got say you're in the military, being all nice to them is not going to work. So it's kind of a mix of both, where you kind of need that kind of structured, you need that kind of structure, and you need that kind of, I won't say aggression, but kind of assertiveness within your training, whilst the kind of care and teaching and that aspect of it. And I think that circles around to my own coaching philosophy, and it circles around to working with, like, with these with kids that aren't really following the rules, and the alternative education side of what I've done in my own in my career as well, away from basketball, so it's mad because it all seems to kind of come into one, and it's pretty cool how it kind of seems to mesh together.
I really like that. I always think some of the three best things that make up a good coach is to be fluid, dynamic, and individual when it comes to anyone, no matter the sport, no matter the discipline, no matter the scenario. Because as much as, like, with, like, army PTIs can get really rigid,
of course,
some of the people I've spoken to have been in the military, also, like, sometimes will take them aside and they'll have a real, like, heart-to-heart moment with them, and that's the side that you don't see quite often. It's like pushed, and it's like, what's going on, and it's like there's a lot more under the skin, and when they get to it, it's like, oh, well, this is going on back home. It's like, oh, shit, didn't realise that, and then it comes out.
Yeah, and that's the duality, I think, of being kind of a man, and that's where I've had to, like, kind of find myself in that aspect, because, like, I felt kind of lost in that growing up, like, and I think that just having, like, you need both sides of it for your growth, and the world isn't kind, the world isn't fair, and you need to understand that and come to terms with it and be okay with that, and I think that knowing that and understanding that has helped me, like, understand myself and understand kind of my place in society and how I can navigate around that, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
So you've been saying, like, a lot about how basketball's helped you, and it's something that's brought you a lot of passion in life, and that's been what's helped you through these difficult times. And you also work with kids both in and out of sport.
Yeah.
how would you advise them to find what they're passionate about? Because with your sport, you're going to get a lot of kids that come in, like basketball's quite a niche thing. They've probably already found it by the time they've got to you.
Of course.
So they know their passion, but what about the kids outside of basketball that you work with? Because you can't just force basketball on them.
Exactly, and that's what I found, because, I mean, a lot of the kids that I coach and teach, they teach, not coach, they don't know about basketball, they don't really care about that, but I think you've got to try different things, and I think you've got to be open to new experiences as well. Like, and you've got to try and find yourself and not fall into a lot of cliches. I think that it's tough growing up because you kind of follow what the majority is doing. That tends to be the thing. Because, I mean, like, especially in this world today, it's kind of hard to find yourself, because there's so much noise around, and there's so much, everyone my age should be doing this, should be Snapchatting, should be vaping, or, I mean, we've seen that during our jobs, you know what I mean? It's tough to come away from that, but I think that with the right guidance, I think it's a mix between guidance and freedom. You know, you don't want to force a sport on someone, but you want to guide them to kind of find what they like and what they enjoy, and kind of navigate around that. And it's tough. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of fell into basketball just off kind of random events. You know what I mean? But I'm kind of glad I did, and I'm glad I kind of put myself in that, because if I'm being honest, what it was, I thought, I wasn't that fast running. Like, everyone seemed to have an identity in my school, you know, and I wasn't really that good at rugby, that good at football. I was kind of like dangly, like I had long legs and stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, what else? Athletics, I was pretty good at hurdles, but I wasn't that good, you know. And like, like the culture of basketball as well, like the dress, the music, it just enticed me so much, and it just felt like the right thing for me, you know. And I think I'm blessed in that, and I think a lot of kids these days don't really have, maybe don't have that. A lot of people maybe don't even have that. That's why I feel privileged that I found myself in that. You know what I'm saying?
It sounds like you took quite a natural path to find it as well.
Yeah.
You didn't sort of just let yourself get sucked in, because the fact you even stepped away from it and came back, it seems like it was quite a healthy relationship you've got with it.
Yeah, and even though I'm like, I could have been so good if from the time I found basketball, I just kept going. But I think those moments made me appreciate kind of the sport as it is, and like, it made me appreciate the sport, and kind of, it made me appreciate the sport. Yeah.
Something I found quite interesting is you're saying that when people first started finding the sport and were following kind of like set, like, you must do this at the TikTok, Snapchat, everyone's kind of falling into like what the norm is, and you said there was a lot of different sort of like the cliches in school.
Of course.
Do you find that, this is something I've been thinking about quite a lot this past month too, so it's quite a good coincidence actually, is that tags seem to be quite a damaging thing this, like, not recently, but I've just noticed it more in my life, how prevalent tagging certain parts of yourself and having a niche identity, especially as you said you struggled with identity when you're younger, how it can actually become quite damaging and limiting later in life.
Yeah. What do you mean in terms of tags, sorry? Like,
so if you're like, because you said like not being known as like just the guy who plays basketball.
Yeah.
Do you find that that's something for you that can be quite limiting or damaging at times? Or, you know, on the flip side, it seems quite positive as well?
I think sometimes it feels that way, where but I think, honestly, I think it's kind of internal, where I feel like maybe I'm just, like, there's more to me than you know what I mean? And maybe in my own head I'm like that, but the effect that it has on, like, my community and me as a whole, I think that it's not as detrimental then as I believed it would be. I believed it was, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like I think that that's kind of in my own head in a sense that, like, I'm such a cliche. I just basketball, you know, and even though the people that don't play just might see me as that, I'm okay with that, because you got to think that I've like, I look back and I've invested so much of my time and energy into it, so I'm kind of okay with that, you know. But
I think the external view of tags, other people looking in and seeing like a tag on you, isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially as like an athlete or coach, because it kind of gives you a brand and identity and kind of represents your values in the world. But I've found for myself, at least, when I look back on it, how tags have actually limited me, where I put more pressure on myself to fulfill that role that I've set. I'm like, right, I'm an adventure athlete. I can only do adventure athlete stuff. I must physically break my mind and body every single week or something. It's like, can't step back and just enjoy life more for what it is.
To be fair, I've kind of been through that, and I think that, what was it? I think that when I got injured and stuff, that was kind of running through my head, because everyone kind of in school and stuff, they kind of followed my journey, like, well, my friends anyway, they kind of knew that I wanted to play basketball out there and stuff, and they did, and like my mum and everything, like my family, they were really like, oh, yo, keep going with basketball and all that, and I'm not gonna lie, when I wasn't playing it, it felt kind of like I was disappointing everyone, you know, and I think that maybe having that identity as just a basketball player can be detrimental in that sense. I think that you have got to kind of diversify your skills and kind of like open yourself up to new opportunities and stuff, and maybe that will probably make you appreciate the sport even more, you know, and yeah.
I think with like tags, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, really, isn't it?
Yes.
If you label yourself something, whether good or bad, that's what you are. Because that's what's in your head of what you are. And whether other people are seeing that or not, like with some people it could be like, I'm a smoker, I'm really struggling to give up smoking because I'm a smoker, I've smoked all my life, then they're going to keep smoking. Whereas if someone else was like trying to give up drinking and then they're like, I'm just not going to drink anymore, I'm sober, and then in their head they're just like, yeah, I'm sober, the opportunity comes up to drink, they're like, no, I'm sober, and they've now got that tag for themselves. So I think
there's a duality
fulfills itself,
sure.
really.
I think that that's so important as well. I think that our minds are way more powerful than we believe, and kind of what we tell ourselves and our mindset is very kind of important and powerful, because I think that kind of because you can fall into that, to kind of like, oh, I'm out, like, this is what I do, like, I can't, what am I without this, and
I think it's like prevalent with mental health illnesses as well, is there's like, I'm depressed, I can only be depressed.
Yes.
It's like, I've got ADHD, I'm going to let that control my life, rather than being like, I have ADHD, I'm not
that
ADHD,
isn't,
So when I've seen about this quite recently, that I found was really powerful for myself, was to hold looser tags. So instead of tagging yourself as like, I'm an adventure athlete, which is like just me, you, and probably like 5 other people, I was more like, okay, well, I could either just say I'm an athlete or I'm an adventurer, and that kind of loosens things off a bit and it opens up the scope more. Or I could just go, I'm an active person, and you kind of take a step further and further back. And I've seen in other domains of people's lives as well, where they're like, I'm like this type of person and this and this and that, and then they start holding loose tags like, I'm creative, and it just means that they can do whatever they want as creative, and that's going to be limited to just arts and crafts, like music, media, sports, when it's done right, could be creative, martial arts, being an artist, instead of just being like, I'm the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy and I only do this one class and discipline and this belt, and I'm famous for this one chokehold, they can be like, I'm a martial artist, and they can just take that step back, loosen it up. But even like more generic labels, like I'm a partner, you know, I like cooking or something like that, just like looser labels kind of opens your scope up just to let you go back into that role when you need to. But then I do find there's times in life where that niche role is really powerful as well. The adventure athlete one, I think, can be powerful when you get right into it at the right time.
Yeah, I think I've got a slightly different view, where instead of stepping back from the tag and being like, let's take a wider look at this, I do what's called skill stacking, where I think, right, I'm not going to be the best adventure athlete. I'm not going to be the first person that swam around Britain. I'm not going to be the guy that's... I'm just not... I know I'm not going to break those records. I'm never going to play for Wales in basketball. I'm never going to be like Tom being like one of the best Olympic lifting coaches in Wales.
Yeah.
Like, that's not me. So then instead of going down that one direct, right, that's my niche now, I see it as, right, so overall, I want to be an adventure athlete.
Yeah.
How can I get there? Right, I need to do really well at coaching, so I build my coaching stack up. Then I will also want to find my own fitness journey and build that stack up. I want to get more creative, do the podcast, I build that stack up, and I'm just trying to build all these different stacks. So I'm better than average at each of the things, but then when it comes to overall, I'm the best at the combination of all of those things.
A good generalist.
That's how I see it, is instead of not even a generalist and taking that step back, is I've got a niche, but it's like a really big niche that includes 10 different skills.
I read a really good book on this actually. It was by a guy called, I want to say it was David Epstein or Eric Epstein, because there's a lot of Epsteins in the world. Weinsteins, let's not get into that. But he wrote a book called Range, and it was about actually, and a lot of it goes back to athletic performance a lot, and but chess a lot as well. And it's about different skill sets. So you get an I-shaped skill set, and then you get a T-shaped skill set. And I-shaped skill sets. I-shaped skill sets are people who've got one discipline they specialised in from a very young age. Yeah. So you think Tiger Woods is the example he gives in the book quite a lot, because he started off very niche at a young age, and they called it almost like the Tiger Woods method. It's almost like the Russian model. You want your kid to be a good Olympic weightlifter, you just slam them on the platform as soon as they come out of the womb. In some regards, because Russia also has lots of big general kind of training protocols as well. And then the T-shaped skill set is more like you have a area or one or two areas you masterfully discipline in. So for myself, that would be like coaching, and I'd probably say photography alongside that. And then you kind of have a more general skill set, and they kind of all come in and meet these other two skill sets. So you'd have like, for an adventure athlete, you'd have like athletics in the middle, in whatever sense, and then like outdoor sort of based skills as well. And then you branch off into the more sort of like the podcast, creative, and you kind of have like this more complementary skill set. And they found the people that actually specialised later in life, especially with athletics as well, and we've seen this in certain models, like there's Canadian dude came up with a athletics development model for children, and they found that having the range and diversity when you're young, getting specialised in later, being like a late adopter to specialise in, was actually more beneficial for the long term, and some of the best athletes specifically did a more diverse childhood, so they could learn how to master things like moving and play and being a bit more dynamic instead of getting locked in when they were younger. And that's something that I've tried to incorporate more into my life, and that sounds a lot like what you're saying with this skill set, is that you have a lot of complementary skills that go together, but you have mastery in just the right domains that hit exactly what you're looking for.
It's just picking, for me, it's picking the size of that skill set. So I see it with you in your basketball, is you've got a smaller circle than me because you focus primarily on basketball. But within that, you've got the different like attributes needed for basketball. So you've got your defense, you've got like your shooting, like you've got to have your speed, your power, your strength. You've got to have all of that, and then you've made it wider than some people, where you've then included coaching and technicality and stuff.
And for me, I want to kind of pivot into like the personal trainer side and in the gym, and trying to work with an athlete in the gym and to try and get better, and also the nutrition side, like, and because obviously in uni I did sports science, and like the physiology, the nutrition, even the psychology, like all of those things come into being an athlete, and all of those things are so important, you know, and that's why, like, starting with my own coaching business, I wanna pivot into that and kind of hone in on what makes a great athlete. And it's not just the coaching. It really isn't. Like, it's your lifestyle, it's your diet, it's how you feeling mentally. Are you mentally prepared for this game? Like, there's so much that comes into it, and I think that that's why it's kind of hard to kind of like, back to the tagging point, is that like, oh, you're just seen as a basketball player and I coach basketball. I don't want it just to seem like that. I really want to kind of grow that and pivot into different aspects of an athlete's life, because it's a lot. It's a lot of, it's tough, especially if you're in an academy. Like, the sport is growing so much in Wales, and I'm specifically Cardiff, and I'm so excited to see the way it goes and be part of that. And I just know that it's not just the coaching that is needed, it's kind of the promotion, it's the financial side. Like, there's so much that comes into kind of growing a sport, you know, and then trying to get funding, and there's so much that goes into it, you know, and I just think that, like, I just think that you can't just think it's just the coaching, you know. And I think that that's something that I've kind of realized as I get older, and as I've been playing in basketball in Wales, playing basketball in Wales for quite a long time now. You know, it's a lot.
You find that looking at all of that, like there's this kind of inherent duality of seeing it, where it's very exciting that we get to do a lot more now. That as a coach, you're not just limited, like you just show up to a gym and take someone for this. We've got like nutrition, said finances, marketing, so like social media comes into it massively as well, both good and bad.
Yeah.
And then the flip side of it as well is it's almost quite intimidating as well how much you can do now, because most coaches are on it. Most coaches don't just coach now, they do nutrition, they do social media marketing.
Of course.
Some of them get into the mental health zone as well, some don't. Yeah, and then there are all those hyper specialised people. Do you find for yourself you have that same sort of thing where, you know, it's really exciting, but then at the same time there is that sort of intimidation with the vastness of the skill sets now?
Yeah, I think it is overwhelming, but if I'm being honest, I feel like the people that I coach, especially the one-on-one coaching I do, either they know and have seen my journey and kind of know me as a basketball player, or like they know me, or they've seen me kind of play and stuff, and I think that they understand that like I feel like they can see the passion, and they can see that it's for the love of the game, and they can see that like I have a lot of attention to detail and stuff. Like, so I was coaching. So I have a friend that I was coaching. When was it? I think Monday. I think it was. I was coaching it, and just hearing what, like, as I was giving him advice and hearing what he was saying back to me, like, oh, you actually know what you're talking about, and like you have attention to detail, and I love the fact that kind of that feedback, because I'm just trying to be a bit of a perfectionist. I'm like, yo, you need to get your elbow here. Like I'm just trying to get him as good as possible, and that's all my mindset is really. And to kind of get the feedback back that like, oh, you kind of know what you're talking about, and you can see the passion in my eyes and stuff. You know what I mean? And that's just off one-on-one coaching. And then when it comes to the kind of the team coaching, the feedback I get from other coaches is that like that I do seem passionate, and a lot of the kids kind of buy into kind of what I do, and because I'm kind of happy about it, and maybe I fit like tick boxes in terms of like, oh, I look like a basketball player. I'm fine with that. I'll play off that. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, I think the biggest factor is the fact they can see that passion in me, and I think that that's kind of universal. You know, and you can't really fake that. You know, especially kids, they'll see right through you. Yeah, they'll see right through you. You know, and I'm kind of blessed to be in a position where I can have an influence on kind of the next generation, and they can kind of see me as a bit of a role model. Not to say that, oh, I'm it. These kids should be surpassing me. You know, and they're the next generation. They could take Wales to a new height. You know, and if I can be part of helping that, if I can transfer the skills that I've accumulated over the years into the next generation, then I feel like I've done my bit for the sport I love, you know, and that's kind of why I'm so why I haven't come away from coaching, you know. But yeah,
I really like that.
Yeah. Something I did want to bring up was something that we spoke about in one of our car journeys.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this a lot because the way, like, when we were talking about it, the way I was saying it, I hadn't fully processed myself until I said it to you.
I see.
It's one of those things, and that's always, like, the case with me. But it was something that you said where you was talking about, oh, I just got to work harder, and you was constantly saying, like, I outwork everyone, I'm always going to outwork everyone, and then there was times where you was coming into work and you was like, I'm so drained, I've been working so hard, but I just got to keep pushing. And then I was like, do you have to keep pushing? Like, is that the issue, or is the issue that you're not, like, training smart enough? And I know we've spoken about this before, where we've spoke about work capacity versus your ability to adapt to the changes. And I was like, maybe you're just, like, pushing your work capacity up, but the actual like limit you've got to the changes is like a lot lower. Maybe you need to work to that limit first.
I think that's 100% smart. Right, because I went away with leading up to the Gibraltar trip. So we had a free Tri-Nation tournament in Gibraltar. So we played, what was it? We played Gibraltar, Andorra, and then another Spanish team, I think it was. But like leading up to that, that's when I felt like I was doing way too much, if I'm being honest. But I came into, I felt prepared going into Gibraltar and stuff, and I honestly enjoyed myself. That was a good experience for me, you know. But coming away from that, I got home and I just felt burnt out, you know, and like injuries were creeping up, you know, and I just really felt burnt out. And I took, if I'm being honest, I took a couple of weeks off, and I think that can sometimes be my issue, where it's inconsistent in the fact that it'll be a crazy workload, and then I'll drop off, and you need that consistency, you know. And I think that coming away from that and realizing that and having a bit, to be honest, you do need a break from basketball anyway. Like, like preseason already started, you know, so I probably needed that break. But I think that that's one thing that's kind of been an issue with me, is that I tend to, the irregularity of my work and training tends to have a negative impact, because I'm working, because I'll work crazy hard and then I'll get burnt out, and then it's the ups and downs of it. And I think that realizing that, like, as I become older as I become older and a bit smarter about basketball, I know that going into the next season, and I understand that I need to kind of level out a bit, and I'm so excited to go back to training, because obviously recently I've had my wisdom tooth out, so I'm not allowed to train, but give it a week and I can just be back kind of on it. And so I play for Cardiff Met. Also, we've got more Wales stuff coming up. So Wales are playing a USA select team. So it's basically a team from the US, like different college players, all of that kind of want a professional contract in the UK. So they do little exhibition games. So I'm so like, and knowing that, and I've played in it, I want to say twice now, maybe once or twice. Yeah, maybe once. And I always felt like I could do more, you know. And it's always kind of the start of the season for me, because that game is right before the all the season stuff. So leading up to that, I've realized that I need to plan appropriately, and I need to not try and do too much, because we're all human. And as I learn more about myself, I understand that I can't, like, that isn't conducive to performance, you know what I mean? And I'm just kind of, it just seems like every year I'm kind of getting a bit smarter about things and taking in a lot of information, and that's a testament to my teammates. For one, like, so he's also was the Wales captain when we went to Gibraltar, James Dorr. I think he's about 36 now, but he's been playing so long, and we have a couple guys that have been playing so long. So also Eddie as well, Eddie Kazio. He's like a Archer's legend, like Wales basketball legend. He must be in his 40s now, and he's still playing to this day. And looking at those and having those kind of people around me to look up to, kind of, and take information from, is kind of what helps me not kind of get lost in it. And I think that as I have these kind of role models and inspirations around me, that's kind of made me a bit smarter with everything, and kind of helped me to understand that, like, you need to have balance in your life. It's not just basketball. It's not because you will get burnt out, as I have, you know.
Yeah.
But, 100% right. 100% right.
I just remember those car journeys where you'd, like, on the way to work, you'd be like, oh, I'm so drained from yesterday's training. And then on the way back, I'd be like, oh, what are you doing for the rest of the day? Oh, I'm going training. And then I was like, yeah, right, okay. So you're tired from training, you're still going to go training. And as much as I admire you for that, of like, you just got to do it, like, sometimes you do just have to look at your adaptive energy and be like, how much of this training that I'm doing is actually conducive to my performance? Like, I always think about the 80-20 rule of like 20% of the work gets 80% of the results. Obviously, someone that's playing internationally, you need to just get more than 80% of the results. But how much of that other 80% is actually pushing the limits for you? So that's how I was seeing it as an outsider.
No, that's 100% right. And it's nice to have someone that's kind of gone through all the experience you've done in terms of like reaching these goals, walking, Welsh 3000, all of this. It's kind of nice to see someone else that's kind of putting themselves through all of that to reach a goal, and that's outside of basketball, kind of give advice and maybe realise a couple of things. So, to be honest, like, it was a perfect storm of having you kind of in the unit with me and stuff, because you seem to be on it a bit more than me, if I'm being honest, a bit more structured than me, and it helped me to realise. And I kind of love just in life that, like, it seems like by osmosis, I just seem to find like different people, and that kind of I can give a little, they can get, like, I get from, you know, it's mutually beneficial. I don't feel like I'm just there, like, I probably am, but I don't feel like I'm just there racking the brain, taking it, you know what I'm saying? Like, but, nah,
No, those car journeys were good. And I do just want to point out, did you hear what he said, Taylor?
Yeah.
How I'm structured. So just wanted that officially on the podcast.
This is something I'm quite regular here. Is I'll plan everything out on all the spreadsheets for training, like months of training programmed out, and then you'll do it, and then you'll go, nah, I'm bored. I don't do something else. I'm going to do it because I've told myself I'm going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
I followed a program for the Welsh 3000s.
Yes, you did.
I did.
You did, finally.
It's usually like when I've got a coach, I will follow stuff. When I was paying Tom Jolly to be my weightlifting coach, I followed that program religiously, apart from the days, and Tom knows full well about this, where I would just be like, I'm going to max out today.
Nice.
And he would be like just messaging me being like, how was today's session, Will? And I'll be like, I tried maxing out, it went horribly, you were right, Tom.
You know the days where you go and you do just need to push a little bit more, just for I find at the moment I was originally planning to run a marathon with an anchor this year, but then life got a bit crazy over the last couple of months, starting a new job and moving out, so I was like, I'm going to push it to next year instead. And so I'm going to promise myself this year, and I rightfully went against it. I say rightfully, but I just basically did a 180. I was like, I'm not going to do any challenges this year. I was like, originally I was going to do it in the beginning of the year, and then some things happened where I work that meant that I was no longer going to do it because I didn't have the support to go up to Scotland. I was going to do a 6-day challenge up there. So I was like, okay, I'll put that project on the back burner, do something. This year I was like, I'm just going to explore and just adventure through life a bit more, learn a lot more, meet new people, do whatever, go with the flow. I'm going to recover a bit more as well, because my body's just been abused for the last however many years. Give it a couple of months, I was like, I got the itch, I'm going to do something. And I started programming for it. I went and did all the testing, I planned everything out, I mapped it, and then I was like, day one ready for training, and then I looked at my life over the next few months, and I took a step back and I was like, this is going to kill me if I do this. I was like, this is going to be the hardest one to train for yet, especially with everything going on now, because I've started like a second job and moving out, and it makes things a bit more like financially difficult to fund the project. And I was like, you know what, I promised myself a rest just yet, and I was like, I'm really not looking after myself if I don't actually keep to that promise. So I took a step back and wrote a whole recovery program to follow for like 2 months, and I was like, this isn't like me, recovery, 2 months. I was like, what's recovery? And then even starting that, I had like first couple of sessions or two, my body's kind of down-regulating, getting used to like, okay, we're going on a bit of like a chill zone for a few months. And then within a session or two, I was like, I need to chuck in some disgusting sort of finisher. So I'm there like hurling kettlebells across the gym, boxing gloves on, doing like circuits. And it's just like, that itch is always there.
Yeah.
I can't get rid of it.
That's what happens when you get to like a certain level of fitness and sport, especially. Is this like, right, yes, I've achieved this thing, let's take a break. You take a break and you're like, I want to like be achieving again.
That's it. And I think having that momentum is so important, because I think that's why I kind of always want to keep going, and that's why I kind of get frustrated when I get burnt out, because I'm like I've built up all this momentum, and now I'm kind of like burnt out, and I want to take a break, and it's like But I think like momentum with anything, like with in terms of coaching and in terms of everything, I think that as soon as you've got something good, try and keep it going as much as you can, but don't have it not as a detriment to your health. I think that's the most important thing. I think that's kind of what I've had to realise, like, and yeah, because you can't burn yourself out. You gotta.
Are there any practices that you keep in place for yourself to keep, like, you know, running good throughout the year outside of actually training with basketball? Like, is there anything for your mind, for your bodies, anything like that you have?
Yeah, if I'm being honest, so during lockdown I was doing a lot of meditation, and I think that kind of kept me sane through lockdown, because I was like, that was a year of basketball where, you know, I felt like I think it was my second year back from uni. I'd already done 1 year back with Cardiff Met, and then I'm pretty sure that's when lockdown hit. And I was like, all that momentum is just gone, you know, and I needed to keep busy. I mean, everyone was kind of going through it in lockdown. I think the summer one, it was cool because I was working outside, like, I was in the best shape in that summer, like lockdown, and then when the kind of winter one hit, that's kind of when that kind of died down, and I had to think, But yeah, for me, I want to go back to kind of the meditation, definitely when I'm kind of during the season, because I know that the season's going to be tough. We're in a higher division now, and that division, it just seems to be getting better. Like, they've got BBL players, which is the professional league in the UK, playing teams that playing in a league where we're playing, so it's a high level, you know. So I think meditation, and for me, yoga has always been such a like good thing for me, my body, my mind, and everything. And even just looking, like, so many basketball players do that because mobility is so important to basketball.
Definitely.
And just kind of just knowing your body and learning about your body and just being strong in those certain movements are actually so important, you know. And I think that one thing I've advised, like everyone, I'm like, yo, start yoga, because I know a lot of players don't stretch as they should be. A lot of young players, they'll go park, play for hours, they'll go to the gym, first thing they do is try to dunk it. Like, it's yeah, and that's why I'm like, yoga, even if you don't do yoga, just try to do some kind of stretching, some type of mobility thing, you know what I mean? And I think reading as well, like I'm pretty sure we got the same book, the Mama Mentality book, and like just flicking through that, just looking, even when I don't read it, just looking through the pictures and just kind of, coming away from that, that really kind of helps me in terms of like leveling out a bit and not just constantly thinking basketball training, you know what I mean? It's all a balance, really.
I think reading's probably my favourite one. Out of all the practices I've tried, like, for me, ones that I try to keep regularly are meditation, breath work, and journaling, like the 200 normally, cold showers as well. But I found, like, more recently in my life, it used to be like I would drill these practices for a certain amount of time every single day. And it was more like, now I'm like kind of taking a bit more chill time. It was almost like a preparation phase of like building all these skills up and building this mindset up. And now I feel more like I'm kind of taking the gas off. Instead of pushing to keep optimising with it, it's more like I'm going out and living more, and I'm just using it to regulate as needed. And that's kind of been the approach I've been looking for more recently. But with the reading, I found that one so powerful, just challenging your perspective, like, as often as you can.
100%. Like, I've started to kind of read before bed, and I think that's just, I think having a routine as well. And it's funny because I was looking into breath work, where I've got a program that I've got, and it talks about breath work, and it has a sheet about that and stuff. And I think that as soon as I'm back able to train, that's something that I really want to look into and kind of work on, because I think that's like, you got to think of yourself as an athlete as a whole, not just a basketball player. Like, there's a lot of things that come into that, and a lot of stuff that you got to do to look after yourself in that aspect, you know. And
100%.
Yeah, and like journaling as well. Like, I've started to try and do that. I don't. It's not gonna be like an everyday like write my diary thing. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not. That's never been kind of me, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I don't think it needs to either.
Yeah, it doesn't. Just as I'm feeling, like, if something significant happens, like in terms of just my mentality or just life, I'll just write down like the day and like, oh, this happened, it's been a great day type thing, you know what I mean? Like, and I think that just having that kind of balance and that you can come towards, even if you're having a bad day, maybe training was stressful, like, oh, like X and Y happened, he didn't pass me the ball, but just get it all out, and it's done, you know. And I think that I'm trying to have a bit more structure in my life, and I'm trying to get these practices in before next month, where it will be more difficult, you know, where I'll be working, coaching, and then playing as well, you know. And I think that, yeah, having that balance and learning a bit more about yourself and what works for you is very important. And the only way you do that is by exploring these options and seeing, trying things out, and that's it, you know.
2 book questions then. What is one of the best books you've ever read that's had the most impact on you, and what did you learn from it? And then secondly, what book are you reading currently, and what have you learned so far from it?
I'm not gonna front like I'm a big book reader.
You haven't got to be.
But what's I feel like a bit of a cliche. So the Kobe Bryant story I have, it's literally a tiny little book, and it just talks about his life story. And I have that book, and then I have the Mamba Mentality book, which I'm reading as well. If I'm being honest, those two. So that was kind of the Kobe Bryant story. Just learning about him. That was kind of the book that kind of helped me understand like him as a player, and kind of, yeah, that was a bit more story type. And then the Mamba Mentality is a bit more about like him, like his experience through the NBA, and kind of how he kind of like his philosophy, like his philosophy behind everything and stuff. And like I just always end up reading that book again. I have other books that people have bought for me, but I just it's like I'm obsessed with the book, you know. And I think that until I get tired of that, I want to kind of pivot into other books that players have read, you know. And I think that during the season, I hope to kind of pivot into that.
And it's good to have like that one that you can always come back to, though. Like for me, the 2 books I come back to often when I've been a bit lost is 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. And that kind of reminds me kind of to willingly confront and take on suffering for the right reasons, and to remind myself that it's a privilege to get to choose how I suffer, because not everyone gets to choose that, and I'm grateful for that every single day. And then the other one is The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama, and it really reminds me to shake my perspective up and keep seeing the things from a more empathetic view.
I think that's important. I think I might have to get a book list.
I've got some recommendations for you. I've got 3 really good basketball ones that you'll love, to do with coaching and playing. So I'll show you them after.
Definitely, because I need to write about perspectives.
I think a lot of what we just spoke about comes down again to a conversation we've had in my car,
of course,
which is about.
Only recorded these.
Well, that's
why I'm here. That's why I'm here.
I was actually talking to you. I was like, oh, we should just like bring the cameras and the laptop and the mics to my car, because like the conversations we were having were really good. But it came down to the process, and this links in with like the whole thing we was talking about earlier about adaptive energy versus your work capacity and stuff. Is you was just trying to maximize your work capacity and being like, I have to work more, and I was like, you need to just enjoy the process and optimize it. You don't need to like add more to the process, because you was like training loads. You was like, I need to read. I'm like now seeing someone, like I've got this going on, or I got that going on, and I was like, you don't need to keep adding to it. You just need to optimize it and be like, right, this is refine it a bit more and be like, right, this is what my training needs, instead of adding to it.
I wish I could use some advice. Well, that sounds brilliant. Actually, it's exactly what I need to hear at the moment.
It's just. Because I fell into this trap myself. I would program for myself, and I'd have this program based off of some testing. So say I did some testing like 1 week, then I did 8 weeks of training, or like 3 months, or however long the training period was. And then I'd be like, oh, so I'm noticing this is lacking in my training. Like it might have been like an overhead pressing movement. And I'd be like, oh, that's lacking. I'll add to it. And then I'd find something else that's lacking and add to it. And I just kept adding stuff, and then it got to a point where I was like trying to train for like 2-3 hours, and I was like, I am dying.
It's funny. That's exactly how I've been in the gym, man. Because I want to do. You want to tick off everything.
You do. And your brain's like, you're not doing enough still. Like, oh no.
But then you just need to like go back to the testing, see like, oh right, so I've built up like my squat now. My squat's really good, but my deadlift is lacking or my bench is lacking, and be like, right, I don't need to squat as much now. I've got that where I want it. Let's pull that out, and then I can replace it, and you just optimize it, and it's a constant like refinement of changing as your body changes and as your life changes as well. And it's about that process and enjoying that process. So like you're saying now, like, I'm going to do some breath work, I'm going to do this, and it just reminded me of that, and I was like, you need to like think about what's benefiting you the most. You might need to add in breath work, but what's that going to take place of? You can't just keep adding it on.
I agree.
I used to do breath work like every night, but now I've introduced into actually training as a form of down regulation. So if I've done a stretching, or even during the stretching, I'll just focus on doing a slower exhale than an inhale. I'm trying to double it normally, so say I'm breathing in for 4, I'm trying to breathe out for 8 and do like nasal inhale and then breathing out for the mouth. And I found slotting it in there was perfect, especially if you need to get back in a chill state after training.
And the good thing is, yoga has that, and I don't know why I didn't realise that at the start. It had, like, towards the end, you do work on your breathing, you know, and that, and I probably just need to do a couple more. Like, just probably need to fit in a couple more yoga sessions a week. I mean, two yoga sessions a week at the gym, like, after a workout. That should be fine, and I think you're 100% right. And I always fall into that mindset where I'm like, I've got to do everything. But
I give you my favourite optimisation then, and this is why I actually start giving my clients now, if we don't have time to do breath work at the end of the class, is while I'm driving home from training or work, I will do the slower exhale than the inhale, as long as you don't pass out. So if you were listen to discretion, like, do not do this until you black out in the car, because it doesn't end well for not just you, but everyone else in the road, okay? Bear that in mind.
Just note, Taylor is not a certified breathwork coach. Take everything with a pinch of salt.
I'm not, so take this with a pinch of salt, but doing that, just trying to slow the exhale down so it's roughly double the inhale while driving home, especially if you put something really chilled on, like it's on the radio on, or any sort of like, any rap or thrash metal or anything, you just go, I'm just going to put a lo-fi on something. Then, just doing that slightly slower exhale, I find really helps bring you back down regulate. And that for me is better than sometimes than trying to stress over squeezing in like 10 minutes of breath work.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Don't black out, please.
And don't fall
I'm not
asleep
responsible if you die for being a bloody idiot. Darwinism and all.
Right. So, with training then, so you've now started your coaching business, you want to expand it to fitness and everything. What would you say, now that we've spoken about process and optimizing it, what is the most important parts of like basketball training outside of basketball that is going to be most beneficial for those looking to improve?
Balance. I think balance of and it's fine to be obsessed with a sport, but I think you've got to have balance. So I have this one kid that he must be about 13, 14. He loves basketball. He loves it. So he had, and so he was coming to training loads, asking me loads. Wanted me to send him all the workouts I used to do and stuff. And honestly, like and a very coachable kid as well. But he did a little bit too much, and he had a bit of a repetitive injury on the knee. So like a growth injury. I'm not sure specifically what it was, but he was coming to training with his strapped up. I was like, listen, you can't stop. Have a break, have a break. And I think that because he loves basketball so much, which is fine, you can't get it to a point where it's detrimental to your health and detrimental to other aspects of your life. Yeah. Like basketball is one thing, but there's so much more that you are as a person. Even me that's pretty much obsessed with basketball and pretty much tried to make it my life. I think having that balance and going out with friends, like just doing other things, and I think that's very important for a lot of young players that are kind of driven and probably gonna be the next Welsh stars. If I'm being honest, like these are people that have such a bright future, but I don't want them to get to the point where they're burnt out, kind of like me. So a bit of a poor example, but yeah. So I don't want them to kind of get burnt out and kind of learn from the mistakes I've made in the past, where I've kind of just gone a bit too crazy and not been smart about things. And I think that a lot of the kids that are probably going to be the future need that kind of guidance, and a lot of the social media around basketball, especially like this generation, I'm not gonna lie, it's a lot of like, I'm going to the NBA and stuff like that. I think you've got to manage. It's fine to have a dream, but I think you've got to kind of understand that there's steps towards that dream, and kind of have, okay, you want to go to the NBA first, let's try and get you on a national league team playing like at a high level. Now let's get you playing for your country. Like let's manage. I don't want to say managing expectations, because I know that having that dream and having that hope as a kid is so important. So I'm never going to dampen on a kid saying he's going to go to the NBA. I'm just going to say, let's focus on getting you on a basketball team first. You know what I mean? And a lot of kids come to me, and I think there's a lot of ego. It's tough because basketball is it feels like a niche sport, especially for the younger generation. So maybe because you can dunk or something as a kid, that everyone thinks you're godly, you know. And I think that managing that ego and just being a bit, setting yourself in reality a bit more, and being that kind of, having that self-awareness, and I think that comes from seeing other people a similar age, higher level than you. I think that kind of realization is important, because for me, it drove me to work harder. So seeing, I think it was, so I remember I was about 16, and we had, trials for regions, that was it, regional trials. So I think southwest of England, Wales were allowed to be in, and I remember I had trials there, and there was this guy that was just dunking on everyone, and I was like, I'm the athletic one, but like just seeing that and being like, yo, even though you're the best in your school, no one plays basketball, okay? You're the best in school, well done. You might be the best on your team, good. But if you want to be great, you've got to realize that this isn't your ceiling, okay? So fair enough, you're good at this, you're the top in your division or whatever. If you want to be top of the world, you've got to kind of realize that there's a lot that goes into that, and not keep your foot off the gas, you know. And I think it's tough because we're living in an age where a lot of social media is peddled around. I see a lot of like younger athletes like saying about a lot of stuff about, I'm going to the NBA and stuff like that, and I think that you've got to, I think that you try and keep that hope alive, but realize and understand that there's steps towards that, and don't have that be the main focus, rather than, I'm going to be this guy. You know does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because it's like a balance, and I think that some of what I've seen, the balance is kind of a bit off, if that makes sense.
It comes back to something else we were speaking about in our class, but it's also a bit paradoxical in a way, because I remember you saying like, this is what I have to do to be the best in Wales.
Yeah. And
I was like, but how does the best in Wales compare to the international matches you're going to? Exactly. And you was like, it's not actually great. Like, we're not bad, but we're not up there.
Of course.
And then I was like, so you really want to be comparing yourself to them instead of the people in Wales? Like you're saying, like, you're the best in your school, great.
Yeah.
What about the best in the county? What about best in your country?
Exactly.
And like you said, best in the world. So then you do have to push more, but also not get burnt out.
Yeah.
And then saying about the thing with, like, all these kids have got this big goal, like, I want to go NBA, but then they don't know the steps up to it. It reminds me of a Stoic quote, which I give to my gymnasts all the time, and they're probably fed up of hearing it. But it's, if a man knows not which port he sails, no wind is favourable.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you don't have that end goal, then you don't know how to get there. But then it's like, the way I say it to my gymnasts is, if we've got a destination and you just want to go straight to that destination, like on a map, it's not going to work. There's buildings in the way, there's like other roads, there's one-way systems, roundabouts. You can't just go in a straight line. So you need to like get the map of, right, that's where I want to go, and then overlap, right, where am I? Plot yourself on that map and then be like, right, this is the direction I need to go. And like, as if you're going on a journey in the car, it's like, I have to follow this road to here, I have to go there. And you plot off all the little stops in between. You can't just go, right, I'm going there, right, how do I get there? And you just got to turn your car on, and it's like, you don't go anywhere.
I was quite interested in that quote as well. There's obviously the sea, highly unpredictable.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, if you're a sailor, you kind of know what you're doing a little bit, but you know, things can be very unpredictable and you get pushed off course quite a lot, and you need to kind of readjust things and manage where you're going and kind of be more reactive, but keep that port in mind that that's where you're going. Sometimes the course you take might not exactly be where you're going to go as well. Yeah. Like, you know, on land, there could be similar way, there could be an obstruction.
Exactly, you know? Exactly. And having guidance, so back to that point, having guidance and pulling from people that understand more about the waves or whatever, you know what I'm saying? That would be important to do. You look at people that, like, pulling people that have been through those experiences, and that's why I'm so glad I had quite a strong role models within the sport, because I was able to ask them these things. How do I do this? How can I get better at that? And they were giving me the map, the directions, you know. And I think that it's good to have a dream, but you need to. You pull from people that know more than you. It's okay for that. And I think that there's always going to be someone that knows more about that you can learn from. Yeah. There's always going to be, you know. And I think that as we come away from that, that's kind of where people get lost. And I think that kind of redirecting them into, like, maybe you don't like your coach, maybe you feel like, oh, he's a bit of a hard ass or whatever. But at the end of the day, you can get a lot from what they know, you know, and I think that it kind of saddens me, because I not to be cocky or whatever, I always felt like I was kind of always had that mindset of, like, especially with our coach Manny, I was like, he knows more than me, so every time I'm gonna listen to him, because I you know what I mean, he knows more than me, and because I had that attitude, I feel like that allowed me to improve so much more and kind of have that attitude, like have this coachable attitude, you know. And it's kind of sad to see talented players not have that attitude and not hone in to the people that can support and help you reach the goals that you want to reach. It's not going to just happen automatically. And it might just happen based off talent, but that's like you need to be put into places where your talent's going to be seen, and you know what I'm saying. And I think that's kind of what I want to be for a lot of these generations, like a lot of the new generation coming up and playing basketball. I want to be able to advise them into this and kind of redirect them into the right kind of path, you know. And it's tough because a lot of ego in it, you know, but.
Yeah. What just came to mind for me was how I noticed a lot of people kind of go to the internet for mentorship now, and they'll go look for someone like a YouTube channel or like a TikTok or something. Do you think there's a bit of damage potentially in solely relying on that versus having that in-person, more reactive, intimate mentorship? Well, I think there's a place for both.
Yeah, I think it's a duality thing, because for me, I use a lot of. I think I was a bit. Doesn't sound cocky. I think I was a bit better at kind of understanding what was BS and then what was real, and that's probably because I had like my coach as well that I could always refer back to and bounce ideas off. Yeah. And I think the most important, I think you have to have both. If you're just on the internet, there's so much stuff out there where, like, literally you type in basketball drills, there'll be a million things contradicting each other, all of that. And I think that you kind of need someone that may know a bit more to kind of regulate that. And even with my own coaching, I find a lot of videos and stuff that may have contradicting stuff to what coaching that we do, and being able to bounce that off other coaches that have coached me, that I coach with, and kind of come to a conclusion about that is important. I think that kind of having that skill set where you can look at a video and not just take it for what it is, but understand that, maybe that isn't totally correct. Maybe this isn't correct for me. Maybe, and I think being able to kind of have that critique and be able to critically evaluate certain things kind of allows you to get the most out of all the resources that are out there.
Yeah.
You know? But it's tough.
Yeah, definitely. Last question then.
Yeah.
So this is something we've started asking every guest at the end of each episode. Thinking about everything we've spoken about, thinking about your journey from that kid that was watching Hercules and Space Jam to representing Wales, playing internationally, starting your own company coaching, what is the biggest piece of advice you'd give to the listeners?
Find your passion and hold on to that, and try and keep that central to you, because I think that especially cost of living, mental health is getting worse. A lot of these things there's a lot of things against us as human beings right now, and just living the lifestyle that we want to live, and I think that holding on to that passion and having that drive is really what kind of has helped me in terms of mental health and all of that, helped me in terms of just being able to feel like I have a place in society as well. I think that's very important for especially young men. I think that going through that kind of experience of like identity crisis, all of that as well. But yeah, find your passion, hold on to that passion, and try and diversify from that passion. So, for example, with me coaching, being able to diversify into like the school-based stuff and dealing with kids that might not have the best of upbringing. That's all skills that have come off me and my passion for basketball and my passion. And my passion for basketball. So I think that's probably the point that
Wicked.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on. How can people find you online, and how can people find out about your new business?
Yeah, so if they Instagram, I'm on Facebook as well as Eli Hoop Fit. So ELIHOOP Fit FIT on Instagram. Drop me a message if you want to get some coaching done, if you want some advice about anything, if you want to know more about anything. I'm pretty slow on the socials in terms of replying to stuff, but I will get to it. And also you can email me, elihoopfit@outlook.com as well. So yeah, drop me a message if you need something. I'm pretty open to anything really, especially giving advice and stuff. Like I do like kind of sharing that, but yeah.
Thanks for coming on, buddy.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Adventure Athletes podcast. If you want to follow us online, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at The Adventure Athletes. You can also find us on YouTube at The Adventure Athletes as well. If you click on the link in our bio on either account, you can go straight to our link tree where you can follow us on Spotify, where you can listen to the Adventure Athlete podcast for free, where we have loads of amazing guests on from across the fitness and adventure industry and the much wider world as well. You can also follow the link in that link tree as well to our free adventure athlete program, which is called Average to Athlete 1.01 currently, but we'll be always updating throughout the future as we go. So if you do want to try a free program, we've got a bodyweight version and a gym-based version. Go follow us there and find out.